Hello everybody. Today's lesson is about the three different types of elements from the periodic table. Broadly speaking, of the 100-odd elements that we have, there are three different categories. The first category are the metals. The second category is the nonmetals, and the third category are the metalloids. Pause for a moment and take a look. What does there appear to be more of, metals, nonmetals, or metalloids? Well, it's pretty obvious from the color coding here that the vast majority of the elements on the periodic table are actually metals over here. There are a few nonmetals, and there are even fewer metalloids here in the middle. So of the building blocks of the universe, the vast majority of them are actually metals. Now, when you think of a metal, you think probably of something that looks like this. This guy here. What are some characteristics that you see of this guy here that make you think that this guy is a metal? Well, probably just looking at it, you can tell that it's shiny, and metals tend to be shiny. All right. Can you see that it's been hammered into a flat sheet? All right. That is a process called being malleable. Malleable. And a lot of metals are drawn into wires, like this guy here. That is a process called being ductile, right? And it should be of no surprise then that the metal that we are looking at here in question is aluminum. And if we look at this on the periodic table, aluminum is right here, which is in that metal portion of things. Another thing that metals tend to do is they tend to conduct electricity. And heat really well, which is why we cook with them, which is why they are in our wires. So if I take a little conductivity tester and put it here on the metal, you can see that the lights go off. This guy here conducts electricity. All right. So metals, like aluminum here, tend to be malleable, ductile, and they conduct electricity. Let's take a look at another metal, copper. Now you notice this one here is orange, right? But if we look at it, it's still kind of shiny, right? And it's still been hammered into a thin sheet. And if we check it for electricity, sure enough, this guy here conducts electricity as well. Again, our lights are going off up here. So metals tend to be malleable, they tend to be ductile, and they tend to conduct electricity. Oh, Notability had to restart here for a second. Sorry about that. So here they are. Here are those terms. Metals are shiny. They conduct heat and electricity. They are malleable, which means that they can be hammered into thin sheet or foil. And they are ductile, which means that they can be drawn into wires. Those tend to be the properties of all of the things that are the metals, which tend to be over here on the left side of the periodic table. Don't forget that all these guys down here in the bottom, they actually slip right in here, there. So again, they are very much on the left side of the periodic table. Now, what about the nonmetals? Well, the nonmetals are everything that the metals are, but opposite. So nonmetals are not going to be shiny, they're not going to conduct electricity, and they are not malleable or ductile. Let's take a look at a couple of nonmetals. First of all, let's look here at an example of sulfur. So here is an example of sulfur. You notice that guy is not shiny like the other one, right? If we check this guy for electricity, nothing's happening when I put my my conductivity tester on this guy. So this is not conducting electricity. And if I try to hammer this guy into a thin sheet, all he does is shatter and make a mess everywhere. So I can't take that guy and turn him into a thin sheet or a wire because he'll just break. All right? So that is sulfur. Another example would be something like carbon. Here is carbon, just a charcoal briquette. Carbon is here on the periodic table. It's in the non-metal aspect of things. So first of all, carbon, not particularly shiny. Second of all, if I check it with electricity, carbon not conducting electricity here, right? And again, third of all, if I try to smash this guy, he is not going to break or be hammered into thin sheets, he's just going to break apart into pieces there, right? So those guys are fragile, they are not malleable or ductile. So carbon is another example of a non-metal. Well, what about our third category? Well, our third category, all right, review. Nonmetals are dull, they're not shiny, they don't conduct heat or electricity, and they are brittle, right? Like so. But what about our third category? What about our metalloids? Well, if metals have all one property and nonmetals have all of the opposite property, metalloids are those that just, they're not quite sure where they want to be in life. They want to be sort of like a metal and they want to be sort of like a nonmetal. And so they're going to have some properties of each depending on what they are. So let's take a look, if we could, here at silicon, which is right in that middle section in the metalloid area. If we take a look at him, here is some silicon. First of all, if you take a look closely at him, you can tell he's shiny, which makes you think that he is a metal, right? If we check this guy for conductivity and put the conductivity tester on him, we can see that this guy, oh, there it was. Yep, this guy sure enough conducts electricity. So that makes you think that he is a metal because he's shiny and he conducts electricity. But if I hit this guy with a hammer, this guy is not, absolutely not, being hammered into thin sheets. You can see that it's brittle and it's breaking off into pieces like this. So that makes you think that it's a non-metal, right? So if it is a metal, it's going to have certain properties. If it's a non-metal, it's going to have the opposite properties. And if you are a metalloid here, or a semi-metal, you're going to have some properties of each. So silicon here, being a metalloid, has some properties that are like the metals over here, and some properties that are like the non-metals over here. So metals, to review, metals are shiny, conduct electricity, malleable and ductile, can be hammered into sheets and drawn into wires. Non-metals, they're generally not shiny, they're dull looking. They don't conduct heat and electricity well, and they are brittle. If you are a metalloid, you might have some aspects of metals and some aspects of non-metals, but obviously you can't have all of both.